Peace, brothers and sisters, gods and goddesses. So it is early in the morning for me, I would say. It's 8 o'clock on this Monday, Memorial Day. And a week ago from today, I made a post inviting people to drop their comments and video topic suggestions for things that y'all want me to talk about in my upcoming videos. And you guys are always welcome. I always invite you to share ideas for discussion. And there's a comment someone left asking me to talk about and share my perspective on this whole notion of Black Americans or African Americans denouncing their identity and affiliating themselves or identifying themselves as Indigenous Americans. And when I read the comment, I kind of perked up, right? And I was enveloped by this warm feeling because I feel like this is a topic that needs to be addressed and can benefit from my perspective, right? So here I'm going to contribute my conceptualization and understanding of how people, specifically Black Americans, melanated people, just people in general, right? Beings, spiritual beings arrive at the point where they identify themselves with an identity, right? They take on this identity that, let's say, the general consensus may be opposed to or disagree with. Like, how does that happen, right? What drives the individual to do that? And I'm coming at that approach because that's usually how I kind of break down and analyze many different things, right? I'm more interested in the process of how something came about. And it definitely coincides with my research interests. For some of you guys who may not know, I did attain a PhD in clinical psychology in 2021. My dissertation was on Black identity, development, and acculturation African American parents and implicit racial bias in their preschool children. My dissertation will be published independently. It is published now, so those who are academians or in the academic sphere are able to access my dissertation where dissertations are found. But I am going to publish my dissertation independently coming soon. So you guys can check my website at danielleleach.com for that. But even within my research, right, I found it interesting to see the developmental process that African Americans have gone through over the years and coming to understand who we are. It's like an age-old question, right? At one point, right, we were Africans, right? And then we were enslaved. And then we were stripped of our identity and we became niggers and niggas and Negroes and monkeys and Afro-Americans and African Americans, Blacks, and we just been through so many different iterations of identity that some of us have reached to the point where we denounce all forms, right? We denounce, all constructs, socially defined constructs of what it means to be Black or African American or descendants of enslaved Africans, so that we just say, we're just human, right? I'm a human being, or I'm an American, right? And that's okay too. From a psychological perspective, one must understand that there's a reason. There's a reason why a person may disassociate themselves from a socially defined political construct. It can be viewed as a protective mechanism, right? It can be viewed as a form of self-care. The more salient, for African Americans, let's say, the more salient our identity is, right, as an African American, in the context of this racially oppressive system of quote unquote white supremacy, the more stressful things can be, right? The more challenging, the more oppressive things can be, right? There is a direct correlation between race salience and identity and racial trauma and stress, right? So then it makes sense why people become detached, or they do it subconsciously or consciously, but they detach from that identity that holds so much weight, so much negative trauma. Again, it's a protective mechanism, right? So I don't get my panties in a bunch when I come across, encounter, or hear about people who, for them, this is their reality, right? I'm more interested in understanding how and the why than so ridiculing them, casting blame, judging, trying to penalize them, right? Like, that's not where I come from. That's not my school of thought, right? And that's definitely not my approach. But I know that there are people who do that because for them, they come from more of a political kind of militaristic approach where it's about identifying oneself, right? Aligning oneself with a race, a socio political identity. And then once you are aligned, then you look for those who are not of that, right? Who are the opposing force, or essentially the enemy, right? And then, you're at war, essentially, right? With that opposing force. And that's them. That works for them. But as for me, I stand true in knowing that we are spiritual beings. All is spiritual with me. I know that we have a connection to the universe, and we inhabit this human body, and within the human body we take on these avatars, right? Or these identities. And there's so many different types of identities, right? It's racial identity, there's just sexual and gender identity, there's political identity, right? People, affiliate themselves with all different types of sex, right? In terms of groups. And, you have your sororities and fraternities and all of the things. Whatever makes a person feel fulfilled, because you have to go back and look at the origin, the cause. Like, it's something that drives a person to identify with a particular group because they resonate with that group. And then in resonating with that group, there's some type of benefit, right? I live here in New York City. There are a handful of people who put on costumes and go down to Times Square and dress up as these cartoon characters, right? That kids have grown to love and embrace and are tickled by and just find joy in. Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse and Daffy Duck and all of the other types of characters, right? And they make money, right? That's what drives them to do that, is money. They may not even give a damn about those goddamn kids that want pictures, right? They want money. So they put on this avatar, they become this avatar to entertain in exchange for money. Halloween comes around every year, October 31st. People dress up as whatever identity they want to become, whatever character they want to become. And they choose that based on their interests, based on what it does for them, right? That character, what does that character do for them? And they're able to interface behind this pseudo identity, this false identity, because it's not who they really are. Maybe it's who they want to be, but they're not able to be that character, right? So they're able to wear this costume on this particular day. And it's all fun and games, right? And then when the day passes, they take off the costume. They are no longer that character. In New York City, we also have Comic-Con. A lot of people dress up. There's anime. Like, people wear costumes, right? And they identify with these things that bring them meaning. Personally, I don't have an issue with that. In fact, I encourage it because it's something that a person can do. It doesn't harm anyone else, all right? Like, it's one thing if in dressing up as a particular character, right, taking on a particular identity, it imposes upon another person's privacy or infringes upon their own human rights, right? That's one thing, right? But no, I think, of course, it stimulates conversation, right? It can be triggering, right? But just because something is triggering or is stimulating, conversation, or even it can be controversial, like, for example, blackface, white people putting on blackface, that can be offensive and triggering and controversial. It's debaucherous, right? But I don't see that, oh, this is something that, oh, it should be eliminated, so to speak, right? That these things, like, oh, they shouldn't exist, right? Like, I feel like we live in this world, which I definitely can appreciate, that we can be who we want to be. Imagine a world where you are forced to take on this identity that has been imposed upon you. You don't have a choice. Almost in a dictatorial or communistic type of way, where everyone is the exact same. You don't have a sense of individuality, so to speak. Choice, forget about it. Imagine a world like that. Honestly, I wouldn't want to live in a world like that. I know societies exist like that, but personally, I wouldn't want to exist in a world like that. So going back to this notion of African Americans denouncing their Africanity and claiming to be or affirming themselves as Indigenous Americans. First, let's unpack that. Because even that statement alone strips one of their ability to choose, right? To even impose that, number one, they are African American. Like, these people are African American. If a person is claiming and is making allegiance to a particular identity, I wouldn't even say they've denounced it, right? Like, I think from the outside looking in, like for myself, right, I can go ahead and say affirmatively, unapologetically, that I am African American, or I am an American African, but I'm an African, essentially, right? Like, I acknowledge that my roots, my ancestral roots, are within Africa, right? And I wear it proudly. I knew that back when I was a little girl. When in school, elementary school, they would have us watch these movies and videos and documentaries of African people. And in the images that we see, they depicted African people who were quote unquote poor or financially disadvantaged. And what I saw was strength. What I saw was courage, and what I saw was beauty. Because their skin was just so chocolatey and pure and smooth, and their teeth was just so white. That's what I saw, and I resonated with that image. I'm like, I want to be that. I want to connect with that. I realized that, yes, we had a commonality in being black in our skin color, but there was a cultural difference. I realized that in elementary school. And then as I grew older, I was exposed to people born in Africa, living here in America. I work with these people. I became friends with Africans, right? People born in Africa. And then they came to America for a quote unquote better life, to live the American dream. And they've always fascinated me. Always fascinated me. They've always came with a uniqueness that just just awakens my curiosity. Like, it taps into, I think, an untapped part of my being. And I can give many examples, right, of these encounters that I've had, men and women, that I've met along the way. Of course, as I began to grow and step deeper into my Africanity, many of these, I met while I was in college. And, after graduating college, in the field, working in the field of mental health, right? Just encountering Africans, it's just like, wow, right? Like, you are me and I am you. There's this kind of undescribable feeling and connectedness between me and them. It's inseparable. So, of course, I recognize and I resonate with my African roots. But for people who say that they are Indigenous Americans, let's unpack that. It's not, I think, our job or obligation as African people to try to impose our belief system upon them, especially when they've already made up their mind. Identity, specifically ethnic identity or racial identity, is a developmental process, right? So you can be able to ascertain, determine, okay, where does a person fall on this spectrum of African identity development, right, or Black identity development. For some people, they're like, nope, I am not African. They may identify as Black, but they don't identify as African. For some people, they're like, I'm African, but what is Black? That's a whole nother conversation, right? To be African but not Black. We have to understand that these terms are socially constructed. It's the socio-political construct here that we're dealing with. Someone motivated by politics created these terms. Black, white, in the context of race, right? We have to first understand that. Understand that, of course, over the years, these terms, these racial terms, Black and white, carry within them a frequency. A frequency, of course, that, yes, we as individuals can define, can create, can curate. But even separate from that, it's a frequency that has been created collectively through the collective consciousness of these events that have happened. Our belief systems about these events, our energies that have been infused into these events in time. These events being racially charged rituals that have occurred, right? We're talking about killings, sacrifices that have occurred based on race. Racially targeted killings. There's an energy that goes into that. One must be careful, when it comes to energies. One must be careful when it comes to these rituals, words, names, symbols, right? Carry meaning, carry energies. And with that, that's when you're dealing with things that don't meet, right, the most people's awareness, conscious awareness. These are things that are happening on a subconscious level. These are things that can manipulate the subconscious mind. These are things that are used for mind control. So when a person has come to that awareness and says, I de-identify with that frequency, with that ritualistic identity or frequency. I am not black. I am who I say that I am, but I am not that for which you say that I am, or for what they say that I am. That's okay. I'm okay with that because I understand it. So you have to understand why a person is saying a particular thing, why they are de-identifying themselves, why they are denouncing. And then again, there are others that just say, they denounce because they do what other people do, right? Monkey see, monkey do. They don't know why. They haven't come to a conscious awareness maybe yet. But they feel like, wait a minute, something ain't quite right here, Something ain't quite, I ain't vibing with it. Right? So then they identify, and then later that conscious awareness understanding comes. In terms of being indigenous, I think many things can be true at the same time. The funny thing about it is this, right? You'll have people born in the 20th century, but swear up and down they know everything that happened thousands of years ago. Like things that have predated their existence in this earth plane. But they swear up and down they know. Of course, records, like archaeological records, history, research, when put together can inform us of who we are and where we come from. Right? But there's not one person that can definitively say who we are and where we come from. Human beings are flawed. History is flawed, man. Research is flawed. This is the reason why no one can definitively say. We can speculate. We can come with very strong convictions. But to definitively say, without any margin of error or doubt, absolutely no. History tells us that there was once this large landmass called Pangea. Before there was a North America, before there was Europe, Asia, or the African continent, before there was Antarctica, before these land masses became individual, separated land masses that we call continents, there was just one landmass. And within that one landmass, one would have to imagine that human life wasn't just on one part of that landmass, but it was all over that landmass, right? You know, people say that in the heart of the landmass, which would be, geographically speaking, Africa, that's where life originated. And then from there, people branched out, they migrated, and then circumnavigated, right? They traveled into the different corners and parts of this earth. We're talking about something that is indigenous. We're talking about something that is innate, that was there before anything else, right? So we're talking about, when we look at America, before America was colonized, right? Before slavery happened, there are black people saying that we were here first. And you know what? I believe it. I believe that we were all over this motherfucker. When I use the word black, I'm speaking of melanated, right? We were all over. Yes, we existed. We were here before anyone else. Yes, we are indigenous. And I think that is worth, I'm glad that there are a group of black people who stand firm and unapologetic on that, because I feel like there's history that's surrounding that has often been erased, dismissed, forgotten about, right? In the same vein, I also pride the likes of Tariq Nasheed for creating foundational Black American movement, because there's so much rich history just surrounding that particular niche group. So it's not that, okay, we uphold one ethnic group, right, being, let's say, African, and then just throw out and get rid of, all the other different subsets of that group, right? Or get rid of, other groups in and of themselves. I think it's important for us to embrace all of it, right? Whether it's the Moors, whether it is the indigenous Americans, whether it is, Africans, Native Africans, whether it is Africans who migrated to Asia, right? Like, I feel like all of it is essential. All of it is important for us, number one, to accept as true, and also two, to further come to understand and research. Because to dismiss it or to delete it, to act as if it doesn't exist, is not true, you're eliminating so much history. It's almost as if to say, oh, Southern Black Americans, oh, they didn't exist, for example, right? Only African people exist. No. Southern, like, we're a specific type of group here. We are a specific niche group. I'm from the South, right? And I think it's worth honoring that. If you are convinced, and if you have been strongly convicted deep down in your being, which I believe and I know to be true, that there are people, it's almost like the universe sent them a message and spoke directly to them, right? Maybe the universe ain't speak to you in that way. You ain't get that message, and that's fine, right? You ain't get it. Certain people did, though, right? And then they answered that call, and so they're on that frequency. They're on that timeline. And then it's their duty to preserve that history, preserve that culture. Just like, Creole, for example, very niche group. Now they mix, they got a lot of shit in them. Italian and Irish and Black and African and even Spanish, right? But they still have their history and their culture. And it's very unique, right? Their culture is different than, let's say, people who were born in Africa, coming from certain tribes, right? Let's say Malian or the Bantu people, right? Or Nigerians or the Igbo, right? Like every group of people has their rich history, and that's okay. I don't see anything wrong with that. Yes, we can say we're all the same. Maybe we're more the same than we are different, but those differences speak to a point in time that must be highlighted, that must be preserved. It speaks to a certain language, dialect, culture, food, music, dress, dance, systems, traditions that's very unique and specific to that group of people. And that's okay. That's what makes us so beautiful, because we're so dynamic of a people. We're not replicas, exact, identical replicas. We are diverse. Would it be beautiful for us to have this intercontinental convention conference uniting all these different African based or melanated based cultures? Absolutely, yes. I think back to when I was living in Jacksonville, Florida, and we had like the World of Nations. And it's an outdoor festival where all these different countries are represented in this one space. So you get to appreciate the music of those countries and cultures. You get to appreciate the food, the dress, and the language, and just the vibrations is different. And when you enter the festival, you get this passport, a book that you can take around and get stamped by each and every different country that you visit. And I used to love going to that event. It's called the World, am I saying it right? It's called the World of Nations. I think I'm saying it right. But just a beautiful event. Look it up, Google it. And if we had something like that for the African or melanated groups of people, right? Bringing together, whether they Muslim, whether they Christian, whether they Moors, whether they Pan-African, it don't matter. Whether they from whatever subgroup or tribe of people in Africa, it don't matter. Just bringing us all together. Let's not forget about Central and South America and the Caribbean. Can't leave them out either. Just rich culture and rich history, man. I feel like it all should be appreciated. I don't put one above the other. And yes, let's go back to the indigenous. There's this thing where people are able to take a DNA test through Ancestry.com or AfricanAncestry.com or 23andMe. I did one through Ancestry.com, right? And the results will come back and allow you to see a breakdown. And, in percentages of where your ancestors are likely to have come from, right? What regions of the world are your ancestors have likely to come from? And I say likely, I emphasize likely because them motherfuckers really don't know. Like you only can put but so much stock in these tests, right? Which are man-made. Everybody got their own agendas anyway, right? Even though they may have a disclaimer on their website to say, oh, da da da, you can't trust that shit. You really just can't. Same thing with African ancestry. And people swear by it though. They get those results and they just swear by, oh, they from that tribe. But they don't need, them companies do not know. And because it's been so much migration, so much mixing, like they don't know. And I feel like I've always said this, even before I took that test. I only took it because I'm like, okay, why not? It's only, it was like $39. I'm just like, okay, it was just like another thing to do for me. But it's not that I needed that. I feel like it's offensive to me. I found it offensive. Even when I was living out in LA, people would ask, "Oh, where are you from?" Because I have distinct features. I have slanted eyes, I have high cheekbones, I have a certain complexion of skin that's very smooth, and people just like, like, where are you from? And I find that question, it's a loaded question for me. People who ask the question don't understand, but it's just like, why do I have to be from a particular, like, why can't I just be here? It's almost like, it's a question that makes you almost feel alienated. Like, oh, you're not from here. You from somewhere else, but you're not from here. So where are you from? Right? And then I may say, okay, I'm African American. Oh, you're African American. And then for some Africans who get that response from me, they're like, oh, what part of Africa? Hell, I don't know. Do we know? No. And when I say do we know, we can only go, okay, we go take a test. The test may say, okay, we West African history. According to the history books, and who were the history books written by? Who do we get this history from? Who do we get that information from? Those history books are written by who? So you trust them to tell us your history? Our history? Hell, we don't motherfucking know unless you took the time to really trace yourself. That's different now. I ain't talking about that. If you took the time to go and do your family tree, right? You know your parents, you know their parents, you know their parents and their parents and their parents, and boom, you can say, okay, boom, we came from here. That's different. But just to go based off of, oh, the history books tell us that we were brought here on ships. Okay, if you're going based off that, and then based off that, then hell, I'm from Africa. I'm from West Africa. But at the end of the day, I would take offense to that question because it's like, why do I have to prove? Bitch, look at me. What the fuck do I look? That's like literally that's what I want to say. I don't say that, but that's what my spirit want to say. Like, look, bitch, look at me. The fuck do I look like? Who do I look like? What do look at my hair, my features? It's clear, it's evident. Look at me. Bitch, feel me. You know what I'm saying? Don't ask no dumbass question like that. Are you African? Like I have, I be in LA when I was living out there. And motherfucking African, when I say Africans, I'm talking about people born in Africa. You can hear the thick accent. Oh, you from Africa? Bitch. What the fuck do I look like? You look at, don't I look like your motherfucking black ass? Don't we look the goddamn same? No, we don't sound the same because we've been colonized, bitch. So I speak English. Your native language may be French. That's what you was colonized by. But just look at me, look at my skin, bitch. That's what I really want to say. It's like, to me, it's annoying. It is annoying. And then people don't realize when it comes to African, excuse me, is more than a continent. African, that's a frequency. Just like I was saying earlier, black, the word, the socio-political construct is a frequency. There's a ritualistic energies attached to that word. African, it's our biological makeup. To be African is to be Africanoid, to have those Africanoid features. That's why I get, like I said, I get upset, aggravated. I'm like, bitch, look at my goddamn nappy ass hair. Look at my motherfucking hair. I had my hair for 41 years. I'll be 42 in September. You should look at the hair that come out my motherfucking head. Up under my arms. Between my legs. Bitch is nappy. I don't need to take no goddamn test to tell me, bitch, I got nappy hair. And I'm Africanoid. I know who I am. And even beyond that, I'm a spiritual being. Above being African, I am spiritual. A couple of months ago, I ordered some incense from Erica Badu. And I received those incense and I was burning them. And while burning them, I was pulled in the direction of the sun. I have a window in my living room where when I look out the window, it faces the sun. So something emboldened me, like it got up in me. It came up in me. I think the incense helped too, though. And I'm looking out the window. And I looked at the sun, and I know they tell you, do not look at the sun. You're not supposed to look at the fucking, not directly. You can like, you'll gaze, you know. You may peer, but then you avert your focus, right? But I'm a person, I'm bold. So I'm like, I want to see what's going to happen if I look at the sun. Like, stare at the sun. So I'm like one-on-one with the sun. And I'm looking at the sun right now. First, it's like, yo, that shit kind of intimidating. I ain't gonna front. You first look at the sun, at first it's intimidating. But then it's like, okay, boom, nothing happened. I mean, like, I ain't died. Like, you're not gonna die, right? And I'm like, okay, I can still see. I still got my vision. So I continue to look at the sun even more. My eyes wide the fuck open. I'm not squinting my eyes. My eyes is wide open. Like I'm looking at a piece of fruit. And so I'm looking at the sun and it's like 5 minutes in. And I'm noticing the sun is beginning to change color. So at first it was like bright. And it's like yellow white. And then it's changing color. So I'm seeing like purple. And then I'm seeing green. And then blue, and it's almost like as I'm staring at the sun. It's like I can in my body, yo, I felt almost like my spirit kind of ascending closer to the like I'm like being pulled in deeper into like the center of the sun. It's like I can feel it. And I'm like, this shit kind of cool. Because I'm different like that. When I was living in LA, I experienced my first earthquake. And I was sleeping. So I was waking out of my sleep during the earthquake. And the way I describe it, it was like I'm on a boat. Excuse me. I'm on a boat in the middle of the ocean. And it's wavy. And it was like riding a wave. And I'm like, man. And then suddenly it stopped. And I'm like, dang, I wish that shit will continue because it felt good. I mean, it's just something different, right? It's like, you encounter and you experience something that you never experienced before. It's like you want to do it again because that was the first time, right? And it was a supernatural, I would say, experience. So, fast forward to me staring at the sun and I'm being pulled like out of my physical body. Excuse me. But I'm being pulled out of my physical body into outer space. And then it was like I reached a point where I felt like I'm like, I would say like damn near one with the sun. And then like when I described this experience, it was like a whole supernatural experience. It was like, how people say when they encounter aliens or they just encounter something like supernatural and it's just like breathtaking. That's what it was. So I'm like one with the sun, and then these thoughts started to pass through my mind. Like, wow, is this where we go when we transition? Is this where everybody is at? I felt that. Now, granted, this is in 2025. My mom transitioned May 2023. And so I'm like, wow, she's there. And I started to feel like, damn, that's cool as hell. Because that space that I was in when I was staring deeply into the sun, it was magical. How can I describe it? It was like a place that you see in some magical, like fairy tale land where death doesn't exist, like nothing negative exists, only light and just happy stuff and just mystical things and just supernatural, magical things happening. That's what I saw in like the center of the sun. Yeah, I know this shit may sound crazy to other people who may have never experienced anything of this, but you have to step outside of this carnal flesh and mind that you're in, because that is like a confined space to be in. See, when they say that we only use a certain part of our brain, a very small percentage, that correlates to our reality. Life is like, reality is so much bigger than the little bit of aspect of what we think we know. Real philosophical thinkers and even scientists know this, right? What you think you know and the reality that you've been exposed to is very minute by comparison to what really exists out here. And so that was my reality, that was my perspective when I went into the sun. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a whole nother fucking world out here. And meanwhile, I'm sitting here living in Manhattan, thinking I'm living it up, which I am, but it's just like, dang, it's so much more. And I kind of wanted to, in a way, I kind of wanted to see what was that more. I'm like, dang, we're limited. We're limited, yo. And so then I kind of came back. I'm like, all right, I think it's enough. you know, I ain't gonna front. Now, granted, like, I'm bold, I'm courageous, I'm adventurous. That's just my nature. But then it's just like, okay, I think I had enough. I was like, hold on, hold on, let me come back. I said, let me come back. So I'm like, okay. I inverted my gaze. I averted my attention. Wait. Granted, it's like I was still looking at the sun, but then I'm like, I was kind of recentering myself back in my body, right? I'm back to earth. I'm back in my apartment here in Upper East Side, Manhattan. I'm like, okay. I had to leave. I had to keep it as a memory now. Of course, it's there, but I had to leave, come back from that far, far, far away place. But I ain't gonna front. Like I said, the process of getting there to this, I don't know how you want to describe it, la la land or some magical place, just some happy-go-lucky fairy tale place. It's like I had to come back down to earth, right? And I can feel myself going through those dimensions. That shit is crazy. Yo, it's crazy going through those dimensions because it happens so fast. Like they say, light travels fast. I was one with light and I was traveling so fast from the place I was here in my body, in my apartment here in Manhattan to out there in the sun, way out there. But it happened so fast and I came back and then I remember I had to close my eyes. And when I closed my eyes, it took me back there. I can see the 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 layers of the sun, the colors that I was describing earlier. I can see all of that when I close my eyes. And I can feel myself there again when I close my eyes. I was like, oh, this shit. Like, I ain't gonna front. My heart started to kind of increase a little bit. My heart rate. I can feel it, y'all. I can feel all these sensations. I'm very mindful of my body, myself and my body, right? And I'm like, ooh, I ain't gonna front. It was a little, I ain't gonna say, I want to say scary, but it was exciting. And it was different. Like I said, I never had experienced this. This is my first time ever doing this. So I'm just like, oh, whew. Of course, I had to, take deep breaths, control my breathing, right? And I ain't trying to lose that bitch. I ain't trying to go into no panic, right? And lose control. So I definitely want to make sure that I was centered, right, in myself. And I maintained control over my breathing, taking deep breaths. And I was just like, wow. I'm like, wow, this shit crazy. Life is something else, man. And I'm going to say this. After that, everything that has color, and not just color, but it was like light with the color, I experienced it differently. It's almost as if the power within the sun came in me from that experience through my eyes. So when I would look, and it still happened, I still have it. And I was just like, wow, this shit is crazy. So when let's say I had a rug, which I did do some cleaning. I did deep cleaning, like I think a couple weeks ago in my bathroom. So I, took out my old rug. But I had this rug, right? And the rug was burgundy, but it had like this gold kind of speckles design in my rug. And before I took it out, like I said, I took it out a couple of weeks ago, right? After this experience I had with the sun, I'm looking at the rug and the gold speckles turn. I can see like the rays of the sun. I can't make it up, y'all. I can't make this shit up. But I see the rays of the sun in the gold in my rug. So I'm seeing purple, I'm seeing like fuchsia, like colors that they say, oh, the human eye can't see all this stuff that's coming out on social media now. I'm seeing this in the rug. In my rug, not in the, but in my rug in my bathroom. And then, like, in other instances, like even I'm looking outside, right? Because like I said, my living room, it has a window, and I have my recliner chair sitting next to the window. So I'm people watching, I'm looking outside, and I'm looking at this car, and the color, I can see like the actual color of the car, but then I'm seeing other colors that I know other people don't see. I know because I know I wouldn't have seen it before. And I can remember, okay, this is the color that I've seen before on this car. But boom, after this experience, this is the colors I'm seeing after. Same thing with my rug. I know what color my rug was. I know I wasn't able to see those colors in the rug. But then after this experience with the sun, I'm able to see these colors, and it's magical colors. I'm just like, okay. So I say all of this to say I give that experience and share it with you guys to say we're more than just black. We're more than just African American. Like, yes, that's who we are, and I embrace that. I embrace those identities, even though, like I said, those identities carry frequencies, and even especially Black Lives Matter, is attached to, like I said, these racially charged, energetically charged ritualistic events. I know that it comes with those energies, come with that. But I embrace still my blackness and my Africanity. But I know that I'm much bigger. When I say bigger, before those terms were invented, before African was invented, before black was invented, there was spirituality, right? And knowing that it's so much more to be experienced beyond these racial political identities. It's much more to it than that, y'all. And that's the level I'm on. That's the frequency I'm on. Now, listen, when people get to this level, oftentimes people who aren't there look at motherfuckers that like us as crazy. Like, oh, they crazy. Or you tripping. Only because, guess what? You not there. Right? You ever heard a person speak so emphatically about a topic or a hobby that may seem so far-fetched, right? To the point where, just because you don't resonate with that, it's like, oh, that motherfucker crazy. Oh, they on some other shit, right? Like the people who do and like dress up as anime and all of that, like that's them. They not crazy. That's just their niche. That's their thing. And unless you immerse yourself into that world and you understand it, you won't understand it, right? So same thing. It's like unless you have been privy enough, right? Because everybody ain't called. Everybody don't have access to certain things. Everybody ain't got access to certain dimensions, But those who are able to see it's much bigger, right, than that. And so, man, life is beautiful. That's all I can say. So, yeah, the whole thing about, being indigenous, like, I want to learn more about indigenous Americans, right? Including the melanated Americans. When I did my Ancestry.com test, it was a percentage that said I was Indigenous American. I didn't need to take the test to know that, though. My mom told me that. Her dad is Cherokee Indian. And you can listen, you can look at certain motherfuckers and tell, like, okay, that's what they, yeah. Now, I feel like that's why a lot of people ask me, oh, where you from, or this and the other, because it's like you can look at me and tell my features do stand out. It ain't like the average person that you see just walking around here. But like I said, I knew that. My mom told me that. And then even before my mom told me that, like I grew up in the household with my granddad, right? I met my granddad, my mom's father. And the things that he was interested in, the things that he kept, the things that he did with his hands, like everything about him, his facial features, it just speak Indian, it just speak Indigenous American. Like some people you can just look at him and tell, his hair is there, you know what I'm saying? So nobody ain't gotta prove nothing to nobody. It's there. When I look at myself, and granted, when I say I met my granddad, I know him. How old was I when he died? Maybe 10. Trying to remember. I think my granddad died in the 90s. I think he died in the 90s, if I'm not mistaken. And so I was like about 10. So I only had, me and him only shared so many years of my life. And so, like, he was like, my granddad, I think he was like 90 when he died. Something like that. And so, it's no surprise when you look at me, my ways, my mannerisms, my interests. I burn incense. Like, it's just certain traditions. It ain't like my granddad, did that in front of me necessarily. At least I don't remember. Or he taught me to burn incense. It's not like my mom burnt incense in front of me. But it's funny that through our conversations, she told me she used to burn incense. Interesting. So it's certain things that we can do that will connect us and be markers for who we are based on our, traditions. It's certain things that Black Americans do when you jump over the water, go to the continent of Africa, and boom, you see them doing the same thing. So that's how you don't need no test, no DNA test to show our connectedness. You can look at the things that we do, our culture. Like I say, burning incense, even the way I dress, I'm drawn to certain types of dress. It just yells African, it yells Indigenous American. Just the way I dress. But definitely, like I say, it's something about them burning the incense, man. The incense, the drums, like certain vibrational sounds I resonate with. Certain practices, certain things that just ain't been spoken, that may never be spoken. Just these unspoken ways about myself, right? And abilities and things I'm tapped into spiritually. That's why you gotta be careful. Like people, when you want to sit up here and say, "Oh, you not that," or "There's no such thing as Indigenous, Black Americans," or "You don't have that right. You don't have that birthright. You don't know who the fuck a motherfucker is." Y'all, that's why you gotta be careful. See, but some people, they don't learn. They don't listen. They don't learn. That's fine. You don't know who a person is. You don't know what capabilities a person has. You don't know who You don't know what ancestral spirits that are working through a person. You just don't know. You better be careful. Some people be wondering like, but damn, how the fuck that shit happened? You wonder like, how, mystery. It's a mystery because you don't know. You just don't know. But I tell people, like, you gotta be careful. I just sit back and I laugh and I smile. Right? Let people be who they are. Just because you may not identify, or you ain't tapped in, or you haven't been called, fine. You ain't on that frequency. That's okay. But you don't know. The things of the unseen are real, man. Y'all think that shit is a game. When you look at all these so-called quote-unquote mysterious happenings, plantation houses getting burnt down. Hell, back in the day, they had whole towns being burnt down. Floods happening. People come up missing. People dying. I say people dying, never died before. Hey, things happen. These are not mysteries. These are things that are the unknown to you, but you don't know. And you're not meant to know. You're not privy to know. So I'm going to end with that. You guys feel free to share your comments below. And I'll catch you guys in the next one.